I'll never forget the day my own mother turned her back on me. It was the kind of betrayal that cuts so deeply it scars your soul. Growing up, it had always been just the two of us against the world. My father left before I was old enough to remember his face, so it was just me and Mom, navigating life together. She was my hero, my anchor. Or at least, that's what I thought. Things started to change when she met Tom. He was charming, I'll admit that. He swept her off her feet with promises of a better life for both of us. I was wary at first. I didn't want to share my mom with anyone, but he seemed like a decent guy, and I wanted her to be happy. They got married when I was 12, and for a while, things were okay. Tom treated me well enough, though we were never particularly close. I always felt like an outsider in my own home, but I chalked it up to the natural adjustment period of blending families. Then came the day my stepbrother was born. It was supposed to be a happy occasion, and I tried to be excited about having a baby brother. But from the moment he arrived, everything changed. Suddenly, all of my mom's attention was on him. I understood, at first. He was just a baby, after all. Babies need constant care, but as the months turned into years, it became clear that I was no longer a priority. I became invisible in my own home. My achievements at school went unnoticed, my struggles ignored. I tried to tell myself it wasn't personal, that Mom was just overwhelmed with taking care of a new baby. But deep down, I felt the shift. Tom didn't help matters, either. He was polite but distant, and I could tell he didn't consider me part of his family. The home I had once shared with my mom began to feel less like a sanctuary and more like a place I didn't belong. The breaking point came when I turned 15. By then, my relationship with my mom had deteriorated to the point where we barely spoke unless it was about chores or responsibilities. I remember sitting at the dinner table one evening, picking at my food while Mom and Tom doted on my stepbrother. It was like I wasn't even there. And then, out of nowhere, Mom dropped the bombshell. "Sweetheart," she said, not meeting my eyes. "We need to talk about your future." I looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" Tom cleared his throat awkwardly, and Mom continued, her voice unnervingly calm. "Tom and I have been talking, and we think it might be best if you went to live with your aunt for a while." The words didn't register at first. "What? Why?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Well," she said, still avoiding my gaze, "things have been tight around here. With your stepbrother and everything, it's just been hard to manage. Your aunt has more space, and it might be good for you to have a fresh start." "A fresh start?" I repeated, incredulous. "You're kicking me out?" "It's not like that," she insisted, though her tone lacked conviction. "We're doing this for you. It's what's best." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mother, the woman who had once promised me we'd always stick together, was pushing me out of her life because I no longer fit into her perfect little family. I stormed out of the house that night, tears streaming down my face. I didn't have anywhere to go, so I wandered aimlessly until I ended up at a park we used to visit when I was younger. I sat on a swing, trying to make sense of it all. How could she do this to me? What had I done to deserve this? The next few days were a blur. I packed my things, said goodbye to the few friends I had, and moved in with my aunt. She was kind enough, but she had her own family to take care of, and I always felt like an unwelcome guest. My mom called me a few times in the first couple of months, but the conversations were strained and superficial. Eventually, the calls stopped altogether. It was as if she had erased me from her life. Years passed, and I did my best to move on. I worked hard in school, got into college, and eventually landed a good job. I built a life for myself, one that didn't include my mom or her new family. But the pain of her betrayal never fully went away. No matter how much success I achieved, there was always a part of me that felt unworthy, like I wasn't good enough to be loved by the one person who was supposed to love me unconditionally. And then, one day, she came back. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was relaxing at home when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I hesitated for a moment before answering, and when I heard her voice on the other end, my heart nearly stopped. "Hi, honey," she said, her tone hesitant. It's your mom." I didn't say anything at first. I didn't know what to say. After all these years, why was she reaching out now? "I know it's been a long time," she continued, "but I was hoping we could talk. Maybe meet up?" Part of me wanted to hang up right then and there, but another part of me, a smaller, quieter part, wanted answers. So I agreed. We met at a coffee shop the next day, and when I saw her walk through the door, I was struck by how much she had aged. She looked tired, worn down, like life hadn't been kind to her. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. But then I remembered why we were here, and my resolve hardened. We made small talk for a while, dancing around the elephant in the room. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Why now?" I asked, cutting her off mid-sentence. "Why are you reaching out after all these years?" She hesitated, looking down at her coffee cup. "I wanted to apologize," she said softly. "For everything. For pushing you away, for not being there for you. I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry." Her words should have brought me some comfort, but they felt hollow. There was something in her eyes, something desperate, that made me wary. "Why are you really here, Mom?" I pressed. "What do you want?" She sighed, and that's when the truth came out. "It's your stepbrother," she said. "He's in trouble. He got into some bad stuff, and we need money to help him get back on his feet." I didn't know who else to turn to. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. After everything she had done, after abandoning me when I needed her most, she had the audacity to come back, not to mend our relationship, but to ask for money. For him. I leaned back in my chair, staring at her in disbelief. "So that's it?" I said, my voice shaking. "You didn't come here to apologize or make things right. You came here because you need something from me. Not for me, not to fix what you broke, but for him. For your perfect little family." She flinched at my words, her face crumpling with guilt, but I didn't stop. The anger that had simmered inside me for years boiled over, and I couldn't hold it back any longer. "Do you even understand what you did to me?" I continued, my voice trembling. "You didn't just push me out of your house. You pushed me out of your life. You made me feel like I didn't matter, like I was disposable. And now you're here, not because you care about me, but because your golden child screwed up." Tears streamed down her face, but I felt no sympathy. She shook her head, her hands trembling as she tried to explain. "It's not like that," she said weakly. "I do care about you. I've always cared about you." "Really?" I shot back, my voice rising. "Because it sure didn't feel that way when you sent me to live with Aunt Karen and never looked back. Do you even know what that did to me? Do you know how hard it was to build a life without you? Without the one person who was supposed to love me no matter what?" She opened her mouth to respond but couldn't find the words. Instead, she sobbed into her hands, the weight of her guilt finally crashing down on her. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered all the nights I cried myself to sleep, the milestones she missed, the years of silence. I thought about the countless times I had hoped she would call, only to be disappointed. And I realized that I couldn't let her off the hook so easily. "You don't get to come back into my life and act like everything's okay," I said, my voice quieter but no less firm. "You don't get to waltz in here and expect me to fix your problems after abandoning me. That's not how this works." She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. "I know I don't deserve your help," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know I failed you in ways I can never make up for. But I'm desperate. Ethan is my son, and he needs me. I don't know what else to do." Her words stung, but not in the way she intended. Ethan was her son, and what was I? A discarded chapter in her life? A mistake she had tried to erase? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Here's the thing, Mom," I said, my tone icy. "I'm not Ethan's parent. I'm not responsible for his mistakes or his life. You are. You made your choice when you decided I didn't fit into your perfect little family. And now, you have to live with the consequences of that choice." Her face crumpled again, and for a brief moment, I felt a flicker of satisfaction. But it was quickly replaced by an overwhelming sadness. This wasn't how I had imagined confronting her. I had spent years fantasizing about this moment, thinking it would bring me closure. But instead, it just left me feeling hollow. After a long silence, I reached into my wallet and pulled out a checkbook. I wrote a modest amount, enough to help with whatever immediate issue Ethan was facing, but not enough to make a significant dent in my own finances. I slid the check across the table. "This is the only thing you'll ever get from me," I said firmly. "Not because I forgive you, and not because I care about Ethan, but because I don't want to carry the burden of your mistakes any longer. Take it, and don't come back." She stared at the check, her hands trembling as she picked it up. "I don't deserve this," she murmured. "You're right," I replied, standing up to leave. "You don't." As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger, sadness, relief. It wasn't the closure I had hoped for, but it was a step toward freeing myself from the weight of my past. In the days that followed, I thought a lot about my mom and what she had done. I realized that while I couldn't control her actions or undo the pain she had caused, I could control how much power I let her have over me. I decided to let go, not for her, but for myself. I wouldn't let her betrayal define me or hold me back any longer. I had built a good life for myself, one filled with love and support from people who truly cared about me. And I wasn't going to let her or anyone else take that away from me. As for my mom, I don't know what became of her. I assume she went back to Ethan and Tom, back to the life she had chosen over me. And that's fine. I don't need her anymore. For the first time in years, I feel free. Free to live my life on my own terms, without the shadow of her abandonment looming over me. Free to be happy, to move forward, and to finally leave the past where it belongs.